Hi, Joe Caminati here with Average Joe's Archery with another installment of our Archery 101. Tonight we're going to discuss basic bow types and some of their parts. We're going to go through this pretty quick. This is just going to be a basic overview. In other videos we're going to be discussing some of the specific components of each one of these bows. So stay tuned or check us out on some of our other videos. So there's two basic types or classes of bows. We have our traditional bows, stick and a string, pretty simplistic, kind of what goes way back. Some of the first bows were very similar to these, and then we have the compounds. So some of your different types here, like I said, very simplistic, basically a stick and a string. This one here happens to be a longbow. You can see the straight angle of the limb here. If this is unstrung, it's actually pretty close to perfectly straight. But this would be considered a longbow. This one happens to be a Bear Montana. Very nice shooting bow. We have another Bear here. This is the Bear Kodiak Magnum. This is what we would call a recurve. You can see the very distinct curvature of the limb. That's what makes this one a recurve. Here we have a PSE Theory. This is an ILF or an Olympic style takedown. Reason it's a takedown is I can take the limbs off of this particular bow and then snap it back together. So this would be considered a takedown. Comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. This is what the Olympic archers, or this is the style of bow that the Olympic archers use. A lot of modern components go into the makeup of some of your takedowns. So kind of a more modern twist on your classics. So moving on here, the other type or class of bow that we have is what we call a compound bow. What makes these a compound bow is they have these eccentric wheels on here called cams. Now what the cam does is it compounds that limb energy. So when we're dealing with traditional equipment, the flex of the limb, when you draw back, that is the only energy that's transferred into the string and also the arrow. With the compound, you have these cams here that actually multiply or compound that limb energy, making them faster and more efficient. This one here happens to be the Genis single cam. You can tell up here it just has the round idler wheel. So this is not a cam, this is just basically a pulley or idler wheel that just passes the string. All the compounding is being done by this lower cam here. And I'm going to go through some of the basic parts here and describe them as we go. So like I said, we have our idler wheel up here. This section here is what we call the limb. The limb is connected by a limb pocket with a limb bolt. That's what connects it to the riser. The riser is the center section here. This is going to have the grip. It's also going to have your different mounting holes for some other accessories that you can put on here. Right here we have a cable guard and a cable slide. In any compound system, besides just the string like you have in the traditional equipment, you also have your cables. And you need to pull those cables out of the way so that your arrow has a clean path through the bow, so that they don't have any contact with those cables. So that's the whole purpose of the cable guard and the cable slide, is to get those cables out of the way. Moving down here, we have our lower limb pocket and bolt, our lower limb, and our lower cam. Some other things that you might see on some of your modern compound bows. Here's a different style of cable guard. This one happens to be a roller guard. You can see the ball bearings there. That just gives it a smoother performance and a little bit less friction compared to the standard slide. We also have some additional items here, some dampeners. Now, when you're shooting a compound bow, the compound bow usually can transfer between 80 and 90% of the limb energy, and that's transferred through the string to the arrow. Well, any of that leftover energy manifests as noise and vibration in the bow, so the manufacturers add these dampeners on here to help make the bow more efficient and more easier to shoot for the archer. Another example, we have a dampener down here. That's a riser dampener, just helping create a better balance and, like I said, a little bit more easier for the archer to shoot. Another innovation or another addition here is what we have, what we call a string stop or a string suppressor, and this stops string oscillation, excuse me, and that's that vibration of the string that goes back and forth. That deadens the sound of the bow, also makes the bow more efficient and the arrow a little bit faster. Move on to a package bow here and go through some of the accessories you might find on a package compound bow. Starting off at the top here, we have our quiver. This one here happens to be a removable quiver so that the archer can take this on and off. Excuse me, pop that off right here. This particular one will hold 5 arrows and allow the archer to bring those arrows out into the field. And then when they're ready to shoot, they can remove that, or they can shoot with that on the bow. We have our sight right here, and if you scan in, this one happens to be a multi-pin sight, and you can see the different pins here. Each one of those pins are going to reference a specific distance. So whether the archer decides to sight those in for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, that's all up to the individual archer as far as what they want to sight into. Now, whenever you're using a front sight like this, you also have to use a rear sight or a peep sight. And that is your rear sight objective. So the archer is going to draw back. He's going to look through this circle, line this circle up with the circle housing on the front sight, and that is what gives them that good sight picture. Very similar to shooting open sights on a rifle or shotgun. You have your front and rear sight. Same principle with a bow. Moving down here, we have our whisker biscuit. This is a capture style arrow rest. It's one of the many different styles of arrow rests that are available on the market. We're doing another video that is specifically in regards to arrow rests, so that might be something you want to check out here in the future if you have any questions about the arrow rests themselves. Next thing here, moving down, we actually have our nocking point right here. Knock point is the location or what holds the arrow in place while you're shooting. This one happens to be what we call a D-loop. So this is to be used for a mechanical release, a trigger release. Once again, if you have any questions about trigger releases, we do have a video as part of our Archery 101 series that talks specifically about those arrow releases. Right down here, we have our wrist sling. Wrist sling is just a safety belt for your bow. That's just going to allow the shooter to hold a nice, relaxed, comfortable grip without fear of dropping their equipment on the ground or on the range floor. Right down here, we have a stabilizer. What that does is just what it's called. It stabilizes the bow, keeps that bow from floating around too much on the target when the archer's trying to hold on that X-ring. So it just gives it a little bit of stabilization while it's at full draw. Another thing that we have on here, we have a different style of dampener. This is what we call a limb dampener, and that's just once again to help the archer make the bow a little bit more friendly to shoot by eliminating some of that noise and vibration on the shot. So once again, really quick going through some of the parts here. If you have any questions about this or would like to see any other things in our future videos, please put that in the comments down below. You can also use our contact form on our website, averagejoesarchery.com. Thanks a lot for listening, and have a great night.